I'm Joe Catrambone, CEO of the Stuart Martin County Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to Talkin Business. Today it's my distinct pleasure to have Shaun Pliml.
It's always good to see you, Joe.
Pleasure, with Treasure Coast Legal. Shaun, I think you may be the oldest. Oldest isn't good. The longest member I've had. I think you've been 17 years. You've been a member.
Yeah. It's got to be.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you joined in 2008.
And you know that doesn't even count the time that I was at a previous firm that was a member. So I've been an individual member for 17.
So you've been around a long time.
I've been around a minute.
Yeah.
I've been around the area for a minute.
So are you? I wanted to ask you about how your practice, but let's start with some basic stuff. Were you born in Martin County?
I was not. So I was not born in Martin County, but I moved here when I was 1 year old.
I knew you.
Yeah. So practically, like, if I'm talking to the people that just got here, I'm a local. But if I'm talking to the Laytons of the world, then no, I'm first generation. So I'm not a Stuart local, right? Exactly. So I didn't get here at the turn of the turn of the 1900 year. So, but yeah, moved here in 1974. I was actually born in West Virginia while my dad was completing dental school, West by God, Virginia. So I was born in Morgantown. My dad's from Huntington. My mom had grown up in Lauderdale, and after he got out of dental school, he said, "I'm not living in Lauderdale. We're going to drive north until we find somewhere that we want to be." And my grandparents had spent a good bit of time here coming up from Lauderdale, both coming up by land and by sea, and so they were big fans of Stuart. And so my folks came up here and found a place, and Dad started the practice, and they threw me in Palm City. Well, first they put me at First Baptist downtown. So while my mom was playing tennis, she shipped me into there, in there, which I had the pleasure of actually representing my teacher from First Baptist at one point in my practice. Yeah, so a little First Baptist, and then on to Palm City Elementary, and then Stuart Middle and Martin County High. So not born here, but I definitely consider myself from here.
You're a native. Yeah. And where'd you go to school?
So after I finished Martin County High School, I ended up going to South Carolina and went to Clemson University, which I'm very proud of.
Oh, I didn't know you were Clemson.
I am. Yeah. So very, very optimistic this year. We've had
knocking it out of the park.
We've had some interesting things going on, but I actually followed my sister there. So my sister went there before I did, and then I actually followed her. She went to dental school at University of Florida, and I followed her there to go to law school. So
did you know you were coming back to Stuart?
No, I really didn't. So, there's always the draw, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're from here. It's always got that allure and all that. But no, when I was in school in South Carolina, I, gave a lot of thought to staying up there. I spent a little time in Tallahassee before I started law school. I definitely thought about being there. Then when I was getting out of law school, I thought about maybe going to Lauderdale or down to Miami or Palm Beach or that. And then the draw just kind of drew me back in of wanting to get home. And I think the biggest factor, and the way I sold it to my wife, because my wife's from Fort Lauderdale as well, is I would always tell her, because she'd be like, "Well, I'm not coming just to hang out with all you and your friends from high school." And I'm like, it's not the people, which it totally was, by the way, but I'm like, it's the area, right? It's the water. It's the geography of Stuart is just something I was never able to replace. And I'm a big water guy, so love being out on the boat, and enjoyed a lot of that up in the Big Bend area when I was in Tallahassee. But there's something about the water down here, the proximity to the Bahamas, all that good stuff that just drew me back in.
It is a special place. And one of the things I like to ask my guests, because most times the people I'm interviewing are not natives. And so one of the things that I always like to ask, because it's interesting to me, because we're such a unique area and we're a little speck on the map, my question is, how did you find Stuart? How did you find the Treasure Coast? I mean, and so many people, my grandparents lived here and I visited it, and I knew I was going to come back here. It's amazing, it is a really special place. It's not for everybody.
No.
I have I have people come into my office, and I said, listen, if you're looking for nightlife,
this is not your place.
But
if you're looking for a good happy hour, we got it nailed down. But if you want something going on after 10 p.m.,
but that's the other thing. Palm Beach is only 30 minutes away, so you can, So,
and I'm sure your experience has been, no matter where I am around the country, I'd even go around the world. My wife and I were in Italy last summer. You can always generally find somebody that's got some connection to Stuart. You think nobody is going to recognize that you're from Stuart, but it happens.
So when I first got to in '89, I got to Stuart in '89, and I would go to different Florida Chamber events or FACP events all over the state, and as soon as I would say I was from Stuart, they go, IRP.
The Marriott had definitely a big impact.
It was like an event to go to IRP. It was people. It was amazing how everybody, as soon as you say Stuart, I know IRP. So
I remember going to the summer camp at IRP when I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade, and I just remember, I was the Palm City white trash that had made it over to the beach. So but no, it definitely had a big draw, and that was one of the things that was really interesting about growing up here, right? Is seeing all of the massive changes and all of those things. I remember when the Marriott opened. Heck, I remember when Martin Downs Boulevard opened, so I'll never forget they had a hot air balloon and we were out of town and I didn't get to ride in the hot air balloon. It still sticks with me. The hot air balloon at the opening of Martin Downs Boulevard. I mean, how crazy is that?
Yeah, I came to Stuart just to launch a boat, because I lived in Titusville, and it was a quick shoot out to the Gulf Stream, or over to the island. So we would trailer a boat down, and then, but I can remember the first time I was through it, the only thing on Canner and US 1 was a blinking light.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then when I came back, I went, oh my God, it was such a transformation, because I had remembered that dirt roads and that blinking light on US 1.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I can remember as a kid, I mean, when, my father built some warehouses over in Rio, and the Savannah Road, Stuart to Jensen Road was the most heavily traveled road in Martin County, which today you think about and you're like, I bet it's not even in the top 10. So yeah, the way things move around town certainly changes over time. Obviously, the addition of the bridges. I remember when every bridge was a low bridge, and you were waiting on bridges all the time and all that. So definitely some changes, and definitely some changes in the folks that are here. But I think one of the things that I've appreciated so much about Stuart is not only is there's a local flavor to the people that are from here, which I guess now I consider myself, but there's also a local flavor that gets adopted by the people that come here.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So
it's over the years, and because of my job, I get to meet a lot of people coming in and out, and they all have the same mindset.
Yeah, you gotta drink the Kool-Aid if you're gonna come and hang out in Martin County. But if you don't, then you're missing the point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's got to be a lot of people, Joe, that we probably don't have the good fortune or maybe the misfortune to meet, that maybe they only are here for 6 months and they're like, hey, it's not for me. I want that, Miami nightlife, or there's something different for everybody, right? But if this is your flavor, if this is what you like, it's definitely been a fantastic place. For me to raise my kids, was able to raise them kind of how I was raised, with some like-minded people. Obviously, being close to my family was a huge, advantage, and something obviously very important to me. But I can't say enough about how great it was to, have both of my kids go to essentially the same schools, although they went to Hidden Oaks because Hidden Oaks didn't exist when I was a kid. So they did the Hidden Oaks middle, but Palm City Elementary and Martin County High were all alumni of the same high school, so that's pretty cool.
It is cool.
That's a
It is
pretty cool thing that I was fortunate enough to be able to come back here and make a living and raise a family.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in '89 when I moved here, I think South Fork had just opened.
South Fork opened in '84, so yeah, I was about 5 years in when you got.
Okay,
so
but that maybe was the newest.
Oh, it was definitely the newest.
School,
no
yeah.
question about it. I happen to remember because in 1989 I was on the JV football team that lost to South Fork. That was the first football loss between Martin County and South
There's
Fork.
still
I'm
rivalry.
Oh yeah, well, and that we're not even talking about the Vero Beach Martin rivalry, which still gets to me after all of these many years. But yeah, those kind of historical parts of it, and now South Fork's getting totally every school seems to be getting totally rebuilt. I don't even recognize them anymore. Stuart Middle I drive past almost every day, and I'm like, wow, what a different place than when I went to school.
Yeah, now you got Indiantown High School. It is more, it's more, from what I understand, it's more geared towards the trades rather than just a typical high school education. There's specialty courses out there for the trades.
They're definitely doing something unique, and I would love to have an intelligent conversation about there. I don't know as much as I'd like to know about it, but I've heard incredibly good things about the stuff they're doing out there.
Michael Main is the superintendent of schools. He's on our board.
Oh, okay.
So I get a report every month. We get a report on what's going on, and I always ask, if he doesn't bring up, I always ask what's going on in Indiantown, because the Clark Advanced Learning Center was my idea.
I did not know that.
A lot of people don't know that. Tom Warner was our state representative at the time.
All right.
And
or as I like to call him, Martha's husband.
Yeah. And he got us a $25,000 grant to do a study on a trade school. But anyway, to make a long story short, and we got to get talking more about you. Elmira Gainey and I, she was on the county commission at the time. Elmira Gainey and I kind of pushed for this because she was, as you know, in education.
Absolutely.
So it started out to be a trade school, and it evolved. So in tongue-in-cheek, I say Clark Advanced Learning Center is a failure because
it didn't do what you had intended, right?
I wanted it to be a trade school, and here we are. Turning out 75% of our kids go to college.
Yeah,
leaving Clark. So, and I'm proud of it. But like I said, I really liked the idea when they opened Indiantown. Because again, not everybody's going to college.
Not everybody should go to college.
Exactly.
There's certainly that segment, and I think there's some interesting things going on in the county and filling some of those some of those roles.
Yeah.
I serve on the Chapman School Board, so there's another avenue. Obviously, you can't really go anywhere without seeing all the great things that Project Lift is doing. Certainly with the Indiantown School. So I think those alternatives, and it's really important, right? I think we're seeing on an economic side of things, I think we're all starting to see now how important the trades are, and some of those services that I think we took for granted for a long time are becoming harder and harder to find good people to do.
And this is an example. A welder. There's some welders are making $80 an hour.
Oh yeah.
So
look at what you're paying your mechanics and your AC guy. Now, look, I don't know how it works back end of their business of how much they're making, but I know when those techs are coming out to my house, I'm paying over $100 an hour for them.
Yeah.
So it's
anything
definitely
manual labor. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, and it's getting to be right because that labor is now it's so much manual combined with skills, right? So this isn't just turning a shovel anymore. So you're really starting to see, it's starting to become commensurate with some of the fees that we charge
if you can't use
practice.
A computer in today's world, you're dead.
Yeah,
I don't care what profession you're in. So let's talk about your law firm. What do you specialize in?
So we don't. I happen to have some specialties in my firm, but we have 5 lawyers in the firm. So we really are kind of what you think of a firm, a local firm that handles a lot of different areas. Primarily trial law, almost exclusively. Couple little transactional stuff, but we have some different lawyers that are in different specialties. So we have Rob Rzuski. All he does is HOA, which is going a little bananas right now.
You think?
A little, just a touch. So we've got him doing that. I've got Scott Taylor in my office who does all personal injury. Catherine Mish, great lawyer. You may know her father, Don Donaldson. He
well.
might know him a little bit. Little bit, just a touch. She specializes in family law and bankruptcy. We have Julie Tracy, who specializes primarily in family, but some general civil litigation. And then she also does some wills and trusts as well. I spend about a third of my time doing personal injury, about a third in general civil litigation business, and now about a third in family law, which I would tell you when I started my legal career was not what I thought I'd be doing, but it's getting to be one of the heavy emphases, is I'm saying that right? Emphases.
English was not my major.
Yeah, I don't think, I'll be corrected by my mother at some point.
You think?
Actually,
Really?
my dad is more the grammar guy when it comes down to it. So yeah, really, and that's kind of what we've been seeing on the growth side of things is in that family law practice too. And I've really enjoyed that because it's given me an opportunity to really help people through some of their most difficult times. But pretty much if you need to go to court, we have somebody in the firm that can help you out, and I get the benefit of working in those multiple areas because I'm working with those lawyers on a daily basis on different matters and different cases.
So family law, what does that entail? What does it encompass?
Pretty much anything where you're fighting with anybody in your immediate family, right? That's your typical is your divorce, right? Which is obviously the lion's share of it. We also have a lot of paternity now, right? Like, so the traditional family unit is not as pervasive as it once was. So you have a lot of people that are not getting married but are still having kids together. So there's still the children issues that are related to those folks that maybe they're not married, but they have kids together, and so those issues have to be worked through. And then there's a lot of post-judgment too. So there's a lot of people that have been divorced. Maybe they got divorced 5 or 10 years ago. The circumstances have changed. Maybe it's not even an antagonistic thing with their significant other. It's hey, we need a tweak here and we need a tweak here because somebody moved here or somebody did that. So it can be just changing what they currently have to what is currently happening. And so those are primarily the areas in family law, but it's dominated by divorce for the most part.
Do all attorneys go to court, or is that a specialty?
It's definitely a specialty. I would tell you that if you looked across the entire profession, like nationally, a small, very small percentage go to court. But the people that you know as lawyers is a higher percentage, because there are a lot of people with law degrees that don't even call themselves lawyer. They're not nearly as proud of the profession as I am in that respect. So there's a lot of people with law degrees doing a lot of transactional stuff. They're working in-house at companies. They're in an advisory role. But there's also a lot of transactional, folks. I happen to gravitate towards the courtroom. I like it when I can talk to 6 people in a box and they can't talk back. That's helpful.
Gee, I would have never known.
Yeah,
never
would have seen that. So yeah, we focus in trial law, and it's definitely a specialty. It'll be a lot of the people that you know as lawyers because the trial lawyers are kind of out in front of everything, right? Those are the ones I guess now I should say, vast majority of guys you see on the commercials and all that stuff, they say they're in litigation, but most of those guys don't try their own cases anymore anyway. We still do. But yeah, it's definitely a specialty, and the trial side of law is also radically changing. We've had a rule change this year that's going to create some incredible differences in how things go. So it's going to be a really interesting time to see how the judicial system really fits into the overall governmental structure and certainly the economy.
Is the trend towards getting away from the courtroom and trials? Is that a trend, or?
I don't know if phrasing it that way really capture it. What the trend is that the judicial system is overwhelmed. So the trend is how to get cases through the system quicker and how to reduce the number of cases in the system. Unfortunately, and I have some philosophical differences with my friends at the Supreme Court and a little bit in the Florida bar, some of it is a denial of access to the courts by the fact of, especially with this new rule change, it's gotten even more expensive to litigate things in court in your general business disputes. So, I mean, to give you an example, Joe, to kind of put a dollar figure on it, 10 years ago was not on, heck, 5 years ago, it wasn't uncommon for somebody that had a business dispute with somebody else. I'm taking that case in on a $5,000 retainer. Give me $5,000. We'll get, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to go through a full blown trial for $5,000. Let's not be facetious. Okay, but I was able to get started. I would tell you now under the new rules, that's going to be a lot higher number. It's probably going to be more like 10 to 15, and probably to litigate anything you're talking about spending between 20 and 25 grand.
Do you think that will cut down on litigation?
It'll definitely down on litigation.
So which would encourage people to settle out of court, so to speak?
Well, therein lies part of the problem, right? So, yes, in many respects it will. The problem are going to be on the $10,000 and $15,000 problems, right? So somebody hires a contractor, right? And that contractor comes in and charges them $15,000 and moves this pen to that side of the table, and they call me up and they're like, this just isn't right. I mean, this guy stole my $15,000, and he did this really junky work and all the rest of that. And I'm going to have to say, well, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you, because I'm going to charge you a $15,000 retainer to go after $15,000. I'll have to tell him, go to small claims court and you can get maybe 8 of your money back. So there is a denial of access to the courts under these new rules, which we could do an entire series of shows on, because it is really complex in that side, but it's going to change the landscape. So, but every time, what I try to look at, certainly in general, but definitely in the law firm, is, okay, well, wherever there's one of these hurdles, there's an opportunity. So how can we use under this new system a way to really help people? Because at the end of the day, that's really always been my focus, and it's served me pretty well in the firm, is that if we always have the idea of that, look, we're here to help our clients at the end of the day. The benefit, okay, and I wouldn't say it's an unintended consequence, but I like to say it's an unintended consequence, but it's not. Look, it's how we make our money, right? How we make our living. But if at the end of the day we're not truly helping people at the end of the day, well, then we're not going to be around for very long. So we're really focused on how we can help folks, how we can do that efficiently with their money and their resources. Certainly we're doing that in all of our sectors across the different practice areas. Definitely in family law, that's been one of my huge focuses, is how can we help these folks and not have to spend 15 grand on it. But even in a civil litigation business dispute, you've got something with your landlord or you have something with a vendor, how we can do that efficiently. And, sometimes, Joe, the best advice that I can give somebody is, don't waste your money, right? It's not worth litigating. If you've got a $5,000 problem and I have a $10,000 solution, that's not a solution, right?
You save $5,000.
Well, I don't want to be in that same category with the vendor where they go, well, I got ripped off by the vendor and then I got ripped off by the lawyer. I don't want to be in that category. So a lot of times, and I probably about 50% of the calls that we're taking in that general civil litigation, it's like, look, you don't want to spend your money on this. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So that landscape is definitely changing. And then we haven't even touched on the technology side of how that's going to radically change things. The AI is coming. It's coming in a very, very fast and furious manner. We're utilizing it already. And I think over probably the next 5 years, everything in how a law firm does what they do is going to change. So, because the client's changing. And the client experience is changing.
Times changed daily anymore.
Radically, right?
Yeah.
You know that I need to remember it because I tell this story all the time and I can't remember the name of the principle, which the guy that came up with it, who's probably long since dead, is very upset that I don't. But there's the principle of how many years or what the length of time is for the knowledge base of humanity to double. And if you look back at it, like a good example is the burning down of the Library of Alexandria set it back, right? So if it was 100 years at that point, it became 200 years. Now they're saying that it's like 1 year. And with AI, it's getting exponential and exponential and exponential as AI learns.
It really is amazing.
Yeah. Now you can go into the other side of the philosophy, which is fascinating too, where they go, well, if AI is learning it, then are we really learning it? Is it really the knowledge base of humanity anymore? Right. So a different deal. But just what AI can do, and I don't see a lot of lawyers look at it differently than I do. What AI helps is it helps a client to educate themselves and be a better consumer. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that's great.
No, yeah, knowledge is power.
Right. And if they can help themselves, and we always try to do across everything, is how can we help the client help themselves so that they only really need to use us for what we're good at, right? Everybody can process information through those AI tools a lot more easily now than they were. I mean, before, when I first started practicing law, I was the only one in town, well, myself and the other lawyers, we're the only one in town with access to the answers. Nobody had all those books. Nobody had all that research material. Now it's everywhere. So a radical difference in that client experience, and we're really forward facing on how we can do that to improve the client experience, both in how much they have to spend and how we can get them from point A to point B. Because they don't care about the process, Joe. They want to know about it, but they care about the results. Why shouldn't you, right?
Of course.
So do I,
yeah.
Right? I don't necessarily care how the plumber or the AC guy does what he does in the attic, right? But what I care about is the result that my plumbing and my AC works.
Exactly.
Same thing in law, right? So, but that's going to be the differences. But I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to change the way we do business for the better at the whole.
I just had Dr. Perlstein.
Ira?
Yeah, Ira.
What a great guy.
I love him. He is so good.
He is.
So, but
the king of concierge, I hear these days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we were talking about AI, and he took his phone and he put in, how do I treat influenza?
Yeah.
Comes up on his phone. It even tells him what medications he should prescribe. It's unbelievable. It's amazing.
It's unbelievable, but what I tell folks, and right, we could do a series on half of these subjects. We could do like a whole series on these. Yeah. The thing you got to remember about AI, from my perspective, I'm no expert. I'm no Elon Musk. Let's make sure we understand that. But you got to remember that AI is somewhat like a Labrador Retriever. Okay, it wants to give you that right answer. Okay, it really, really wants to give you that right answer. So when you tell the dog to go get the rope and it brings you the ball and you say, no, give me the rope, and it keeps shaking that ball in your face and it's like, yeah, the rope. And you're like, no, the ball, you have the ball. I need the rope. AI will do the same thing because it wants to give you that right answer so bad. So what happens in that capacity is it'll never tell you no. And I've experienced this with the legal research side of the other. So you got to watch out for those hallucinations, like as they call them. So like it's great. It'll tell you how to treat influenza, but what it won't do that the IRAs do, okay, and it won't do in law like the Shauns do is you still got to recognize the nuance. Okay, you still got to recognize something because AI is not a replacement. It's a tool. It's not a replacement for everything. It will not take you across that finish line, but it'll certainly help you get a lot farther towards it, a lot quicker. So it's a very powerful tool. I'm using all the time.
I can't imagine what it's going to be 5 years from now, never mind 10, 20 years from now. Can you imagine where this technology is going to take us?
Well, as a businessman, I have to, right?
Yeah, but you better recognize it.
That's the name of the game, and certainly the challenge as we hit in this landscape. And I would say probably, Joe, the biggest thing that I've seen over the time that I've been running Treasure Coast Legal is we used to be so isolated in the geographic area. Right? Like we were just here. We served here. This was here.
Internet's changed that.
Yeah, we now utilize resources on a very wide range for the benefit, again, of our clients. I mean, that's the goal at the end of the day. But, you're worldwide anywhere these days.
Yes, you are.
Right? If you want to be. And so how do you balance making sure that you take advantage of those resources on a worldwide basis or more a countrywide basis? But how do you do that while still also serving what we want to serve, which is the local community?
Yeah.
And that's really, we have a slogan that we use on all of our, media and all that stuff. You have questions, we have answers. I still want to be that guy, right? I want to be that resource for folks where they can call when they have questions about anything in law that we can help them with. And, if it's a 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute phone call where I can give somebody some free advice, great. I've made a connection. That's a benefit to me ultimately as well.
A client base.
Yeah. And if it needs to take more than 15 minutes, then, we have a conversation about what my time's worth and we see where we go. But I think that's so important because, and kind of segueing back into that access to courts fundamental concept, if people don't feel like they have legal recourse, they're going to find recourse somewhere. And generally that's in your pocket through taxes. So I don't believe in government solutions to problems ultimately, right?
I don't.
I just think it's a bad way to do business.
I'm with you.
Right? So I believe there needs to be that private avenue to do that, and the legal system serves a huge role in that. And we're getting away from that. We are, and we need to be careful. We need to be careful because there's some unintended consequences to doing that. And you deny enough people the access to courts, well, they're going to get, the redistribution of wealth has to happen somehow. Yeah. So it's interesting. So, yeah, as you can tell, I find all these areas intriguing. And
what we're winding down. And is there anything that we missed that we could go on for another hour?
We definitely could. Yeah. And usually we do when we're sitting at a networking event or otherwise. I would say at the end, and I shouldn't say I'm going to correct myself on that at one point, but I would say at the end is, I think it's important for people when they're looking for legal services to recognize the value of local businesses. Okay, you're getting bombarded every day on TV. You're seeing all of these ads in your face. You're seeing all of these billboards all over the place. And it's very easy to get sucked into the mass media side of law. But I think you need to really assess the people that you're working with on a day in, day out basis. And that's one of our things is, we're from here and we're for here. Catherine grew up in Fort Pierce. Scotty grew up in Fort Pierce. I grew up here right in Stuart. So there's some advantages in your case because of that. But I think there's more advantages in the relationship because of that, because we're beholden to our clients because I'm going to see them. Yeah. I'm going to see them downtown. I'm going to see them at the ball field. I'm going to see them here, and that goes in that same thing. So I think you got to look at what the advantages are to, to hiring locally. And certainly at the end of the day, just recognizing that, Treasure Coast Legal's for here, from here, and we'd love to have your questions, and we'll certainly give you all the answers that we can while we provide some good value to you as your local Treasure Coast law firm.
That's why you're successful.
It's all defined.
Say hello to Mom and Dad for me.
I will definitely give them my best, and you share their best. Well, definitely tell your wife that my dad says hello, because they're usually the ones that spend the most time over staying away from everybody at the networking events. But fantastic people, and I want to say, Joe, certainly on behalf of myself, but certainly the firm, not only thank you to the Stuart Martin Chamber for all the great stuff that it does, but I think your leadership since 1989 to now is really something to be commended. It's kind of been that beacon of light for business in Martin County. I know it helped me get my business off the ground and get started, and I just can't thank you enough for these types of opportunities, the networked opportunities, and to get to meet all the great people on your staff. You've definitely done a good job of surrounding yourself with good people.
They're superstars.
Yeah, you got it. When you have faults as the leader of the entity, you got to have great people around you, and that is something that I learned from watching you work at the Stuart Martin Chamber. So I'm a big fan, and I just want to say thank you. I don't think you get thanked enough for the longevity and the vision that you've had of what's created here for Martin County.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks again.
Thank you.